You are listening to the Oneofus.net podcast network. Casey Affleck. I mean, he just looked white as a sheet in this thing.
Oh.
What? Oh, I see. Because he was wearing a sheet the whole time.
Are you kidding? This is as colorful as he's been in it.
That's right. If anything, it enhanced the performance.
It's the least white he's ever been.
It is the most wonderfully art-directed sheet I have ever seen. I will give it that.
Maybe you were mistaking him for the ghost of Jim Jarmusch. Ooh.
It wouldn't be hard to make that mistake. This is a ghost story.
And I think we've exhausted all the ghosts.
With the
1980s.
Yeah, the Peter Straub adapted.
Excellent. Recently re-released on Blu-ray.
Oh, has it? Because I've been looking for that on Blu-ray.
It was about 2 years ago.
Because I haven't seen it since I was a kid.
It's really phenomenal.
Okay, well that is not
digital noise. Huh?
Yeah,
that is not that. This is not that. Neither is it really a horror movie, although it certainly plays in a sort of meta way with some of the based on our awareness of seeing things more or less through the spirit's eyes of the conventions of horror.
No, well, it's not even that. It's the conventions of ghost
stories. Yeah.
But told from a very different perspective.
Yeah, told from Casey Affleck's perspective, because he's married to Rooney Mara. He's a struggling musician, and he ends up getting killed in a car accident very shortly. This is not a spoiler because this is like 10 minutes into the film.
Most of the movie dead.
So
and not even Casey Affleck. I mean, he is Casey Affleck, but he is wearing a sheet with holes in it, like ghosts do,
like a kid ghost, or something.
Like if you have seen A Charlie Brown Christmas, you know that's what ghosts look like.
And this whole movie is, and really, I mean,
Charlie Brown. It's a great pumpkin, Charlie Brown. So,
or any given thing, a kid on Halloween in a ghost outfit.
I mean, that was the traditional costume for many years.
And I wore it once.
It's a traditional depiction of ghosts going back several hundred years,
wrapped in their shroud, which is indeed what this is, because he's literally. Like the first time he appears as the ghost, he's dead on a table in hospital and covered with a sheet, and he rises up, and that's his costume.
We missed the scene where he cuts out the eye holes.
Yeah, apparently those come when you stare into the Hall of Eternity, which he does for a brief scene.
So, question for Marco: you stayed for the whole Q&A. Did they say whether or not actually that was Casey Affleck under the sheet in the entire rest of the movie?
It was Casey Affleck for some.
Okay.
But not for all of it.
Not for all.
Not for all of it, because why? Obviously, they couldn't keep that guy on schedule every day. So yeah, you use him when you can. I think in the key moments he's there. It's a very mechanical performance, as the director himself said. A lot of it was just if you ever studied puppeteering or mask work, you know that you can convey an enormous amount of emotion through a rather static image or very controlled, precise movement, and that was the way they approached this. And it really does, on the face of it, look and sound ridiculous, and yet it works. I think it actually is a very effective shorthand for conveying this sort of blankness that this character is experiencing.
It never ever gets goofy. You're always okay. I'm accepting.
Scooby-Doo does not show up and go go.
It is a huge gamble.
I mean, granted, if you had the 1910 Fruit Gun Company playing the soundtrack, a little bit much.
But this is. I mean,
they played the Betty Hill theme as they were fast forwarding through time. It would have been goofy, but they don't. This is actually a film that takes time very seriously. One of the things that director David Lowery does that's very smart and ballsy, frankly, is that not only does he shoot in a classic 1:33:1 aspect ratio, think classic films, pillar boxes.
Well, and it looks even with the rounded edge like an old photo in an album,
But he also
the entire movie was done on Hipstamatic.
He uses extremely long takes and moments where it almost feels agonizing. Now, I think for some audience members that could tax their patience. This is not slow cinema. You eventually will get to the next moment. But in a film that's all about somebody who has to observe life through eternity, you have to convey that sense of time.
Well,
you're not watching Empire here, but you're definitely watching a Jim Jarmusch take. It is a person, sitting and eating for a while and not talking, not interacting with anyone else.
You will watch a woman eat a whole pie in real
comparison
time.
only takes you so far because Larry is his own director.
Sure, I'm not putting that cloak on. I'm using it as a barometer, not to tell anybody that, hey, expect a Jarmusch movie here. It's not.
Yeah, no. I mean, there are elements of Jarmusch, there are elements of Wim Wenders as well.
Oh, definitely.
Particularly in his willingness to hold a shot. But I mean, what's fascinating is that this we've talked a lot about Casey Affleck's character, who does become a cipher in his own world, and is increasingly adrift in time.
Well,
which is a fantastic mechanic that Larry, as the writer and director, pulls together.
That's what I like the most about it was the way, rather than do like he's not really Casey Affleck anymore. He is literally a ghost, a memory, a trace of him, sort of. He's stuck in this house watching things happen and time pass on, even way past caring about his loved ones, wondering why he's still there, but not really even sure what he's waiting for, as they make clear with his relationship with the ghost across the street. He's like, I think I'm waiting for someone. I'm not really sure.
And what's really beautifully done is that in the first act, you have the slow build of their relationship, which is beautifully played out. Mm-hmm. Then the second act, which comes very quickly after he dies, that is because he is, like I said, a cipher of himself. It has to concentrate on what it is he's looking at, which at that point is Rooney Mara. And this may be her best performance to date.
Oh, yeah.
There is a scene, and I was talking to Larry.
She does something that no actress in Hollywood at this point would be willing to do.
But just eat a lot of baked goods.
Yeah.
No. Well, this is the thing. I was talking to Larry about this, and there's have you ever seen the film Ulysses Gold, Peter Fonda, mid-90s? There is a moment in that where Peter Fonda explains a character perfectly by the way they drink a glass of water. Mm-hmm. It's a phenomenal character beat. And there is a moment in this where, and it's this beautiful, again, very bold, basically a 5-minute shot of Rooney Mara eating a pie, and it sums up loss. Yeah. This is a character in complete grief. And I think what's great is that Larry gives himself time to just go, okay, you have to look at this in its totality. This isn't just about this character coming to terms with the fact that he is dead. He comes to terms with that very quickly. He realizes he's dead. This is what he's dealing with now. And the observation of her pain is quite extraordinary. That's really one of the most remarkable things. And then the film moves on from that in just fascinating and beautiful ways.
No, but
those long shots make us feel the powerlessness.
But I get what you're doing there, and I appreciate it. But at the same time, Jesus fucking Christ, can we get on with this? Is how I felt about watching it. I was like 5 minutes watching a girl eat a pie for 5 straight minutes, one static shot. I'm sorry, I get it. But I'm bored. Let's move on.
I mean, it's only an hour and a half movie, so I didn't feel like it didn't hit like that, Cimino-esque, like, okay, we get it, for me.
One thing that Lowry did say in the Q&A, and I thought, because people did ask, why do that? And he admitted himself that he has a short attention span, and he finds it fascinating that he has these shots where he says, even I will drift after a while. The fear as a filmmaker is that if the shot is too long, your audience will start looking elsewhere in the frame. Why not? Why not let them do that? Let them look around. It is like a little slice of life. And then eventually, he said, I basically cut in the editing room when I finally just couldn't take any more of it. He says, but I was surprised by how much I was able to endure. And honestly, yes, I agree with you, Chris. There is probably a much more concise, economical edit of this film, but it would be 50 minutes long and it would be trite. This actually takes the language of cinema and says, this is about long pauses. It's about the caesura. It's about the languor.
No, but like I said, I get all that, but I think you're also severely limiting your audience by doing that, which isn't necessarily a problem. We're talking about somebody trying to make art more than commerce here. But at the same time, I'm one of those people who was like, I get what you're doing, and I think it's a really neat idea, but it's also really fucking intolerable at points where I just want it to move on. It's like, Jesus Christ, I get what you're saying. Let's move on. And I kind of in some ways felt about that even when we got to the end, where like the last act where it starts going into this sort of a recycle. We're seeing things from a slightly different angle, but long since I was already awaiting for all this stuff to happen.
I could say that of the last act of any Transformers or Avengers movie. And you know what? It's the same thing. I know where this is going, but I don't feel anything. And yet in these long takes, you can drift off and then eventually reconnect to the emotion. And I agree with you. I hear exactly what you're saying, and I think that's the challenge this film will face. I think the other thing
is those silences and those gaps, if they are... That's his character arc. That he thinks that what he's doing is one thing, but as time goes on, what he's really doing is getting a better grasp of how his universe works, and that he isn't bound by what he thought he was.
Life is a flat circle.
But that's it's a silent character arc, which is really remarkable, and that's one of the things that really is great about this is that once he's dead, he never says anything. And it really makes the moments where there are dialogue really quite extraordinary.
Yeah. I mean, there's like Will Oldham, who shows up at a cameo for an extended monologue, which is really the largest amount of talking in this movie, as just a guest at a party that is by one of the many inhabitants who take over the house after he's passed away. And he has a long speech about immortality and how we remember. And this is another thing that Lowry had talked about. He's like, I don't know if that's necessarily what I believe, but that is how I talk myself into believing, well, this is why I'm doing what I do. The idea of like, even though, eventually the heat of the universe will consume us all and we'll die in entropy and blah, 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 you still strive to leave something behind. And that ghost is also struggling to, what is his legacy? What does he leave behind? What does he have to look forward to? And, it's a fascinating idea that you are, as a spirit, confined basically to your little house, your area, even after it's razed to the ground. You can never leave that spot.
By the way, that other ghost, according to Wikipedia, was the musician Keisha.
There you go.
Playing it, which is like, really?
Oh, no. She was at the party. The party scene where he's doing the card trick.
Yeah.
The lady
spirit girl means spirit
the lady
girl.
that he's showing the ground, that is Kisha.
Well, it doesn't say who it was then. Oh, well.
No.
Maybe it was both.
It was a ghost.
But
no, the thing is about that
subtitle joke I've seen in years.
The thing about that scene you're talking about with his sort of like an existentialist cum nihilist explanation of the universe was that it was almost too on the nose for me. And the director... Because of the fact that this is really the only time of all the different things after he dies that he laser focuses on, concentrates on a speech, it feels like he's setting up his whole, well, this is what this movie's about, folks. And he is, but it was kind of like, but I already kind of got that.
I have had that same drunken conversation.
Oh, yeah, we all have.
And it felt like...
And I wanted to beat the shit out of
that. Yeah, exactly.
But I don't think it's coincidence at all that what you see before he goes into that speech is a card trick.
True. I did enjoy, and this is definitely the more like conventional audience goer, the idea that, hey, I can get angry too and make things fly across the room and freak people out, which made me laugh out loud because we've never really seen that from that kind of viewpoint. And as well being like, this isn't somebody who's thinking this through. This thing, he's not really Casey Affleck. He's part of what's left over from Casey Affleck.
And he has to get through that before he finds peace.
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of things I really did like about this. I think this is beautifully shot. I think it's a fascinating experiment. Is
Absolutely.
How I felt about it ultimately.
But, I'm not going to beat it up because it's not made with a commercial audience in mind. I have to give the guy props for going, well, I made Pete's Dragon, which, by all accounts, didn't do all that great and wasn't that well received. But what does he do? He makes this instead. And, because he said he was going back to his first film, which he shot in like 14 days for $12,000. He's like, can I make another movie like that? Mm-hmm. And, look at what Colin Trevorrow did recently. You keep wondering, can you actually do a tentpole and then go make small films and still kind of keep what was special about your voice?
And the answer is no when it comes to Colin
Trevorrow, that's not true. We wanted to see something from that guy who made Safety Not Guaranteed, but we didn't get that. This, I think, is Lowry's way of kind of preserving his little indie voice, even though he can obviously now move back and forth between big budget and modest budget films.
I mean, I really enjoyed his Ain't Them Body Saints. I thought that was excellent, albeit, once again, more meditative than not, more than you would expect with that type of genre of film. But then, again, so is this. It's a ghost story, and it's a very meditative, slow-moving film. There's nothing inherently wrong with that, and there's going to be a lot of audiences who are going to say, this is exactly what I want out of this. But like I said, I wanted more.
But I think it's fascinating that he was assisted in the editing process by Shane Carruth.
Yeah.
Of Primer and Upstream Color.
And Lowry edited Upstream Color.
Yeah, and you really can see those two why they work so well.
They're playing with time.
I tend to agree with Chris. I think that there should have been cake as well as pie.
I despise Upstream Color with the Fire of 1,000 Suns, although I enjoyed Primer for what it's worth.
What do you mean for what it's worth?
Because once again, it was one of those that was an interesting experiment. I'm glad I watched it, but I would never watch it again. Just saying. Sorry, I'm far from alone on that one, but you're far from alone for loving it. So, it's one of those, there are different films for different types of people, and I don't think I'm one of his type of people, and I'm definitely not the what's-his-face from Primer and Upstream Color.
Not his people, the people who speak the language of subtlety.
Yeah, I watch a lot
of
emotional
depth.
I like a lot of films like that, Richard. This just didn't happen to be one of the ones that really floated my boat. Yeah. And Upstream Color, I would burn every copy in a fire if I had the option. Right next to Tree of Fucking Life.
That's a very flammable movie.
Fuck that movie. I'm sorry. I don't even have any emotions about this film on the whole, other than glad I saw it. Felt even for the short running time, it felt like it went on way too long for me. Interesting, but hardly essential. But there are obviously people out there who are going to be completely in love with this thing, and I get that as well.
People in here that are going to be
well, you guys are out there, so that's what I meant. I'm going to
the metaphysical Three Stooges.
Yeah, right. I'm going to final thought this and give it 6.5 out of 10 mysteries of how the eye holes got cut. Richard?
I want to do a triple bill of this, Lace Crater, and Personal Shopper as great contemporary takes on the traditional ghost story.
I've not seen Lace Crater.
Oh, you need to see that film. Lindsay Budge is just a revelation in that movie. This is fragile and poetic and is built around two very unconventional performances. I think the thing is, it's very easy to understate, Affleck's role in this, but him as under a sheet, there's something really quite extraordinary.
Yes, I think he should do all of his roles.
Well,
you clearly did not watch Manchester by the Sea.
I did too. I liked it quite a bit.
All right, then shush.
Yeah. This is just an extraordinary and daring piece of small independent cinema that transcends every limitation that was placed upon it. Mainly because I think Lowry is fast becoming one of the most important voices in American independent cinema, and who can go into the big budget world and produce something really, Pete's Dragon didn't do gangbusters business, but the studio's still calling him, and it worked on a deep and emotional level, which is what I think he does so well as an instinctual filmmaker. I give this 8 floating milk glasses out of 10.
Marco?
I'm with Richard on this one. I think this is a great piece of small independent cinema, and that's a kind of voice that we, I think, even here need to cherish, because we don't get it enough, and we don't always get it well. This is a film that starts off with a very simple premise, and sets itself some very interesting formal challenges, and as a piece of experimental cinema, does in fact work, and in spite of all of our talk, I think it is a much more emotional than cerebral film, but it does require a certain amount of patience. I think if you are willing to give yourself to the film and open yourself to it, you may find riches that were not that might not be suggested otherwise, just from its sort of pulpy premise. I give this...
See, he was just calling me an asshole with everything he just said.
That's not true.
He was just saying that you're easily frustrated and you throw tantrums.
Exactly.
I just say you're a Philistine. I would give this movie 8 sheets.
Out of
Chris
how
don't
many?
give a shit.
Out of 3,000.
Out of 10. Out of 10 earthly sheets, yes. It'll get 8.
Beau, take us home.
I wouldn't put myself halfway in the middle, but I did really appreciate this. It's kind of strange. Like the last 2 art house movies I've seen have been Meditations on Mortality, one from the opposite end of this, and then which is before you die, maybe even right before you die, to this, which is death and everything after that. And I found both of them profound. I was much more entertained by the hero, but just because I wasn't laughing in the aisles with this does not mean that I found it frustrating or threw my hands up at it at any time. I think it is challenging. And I think you need that in cinema. That's, just like you need people, to the, far right or far left of situations to kind of make a synthesis. This movie isn't for everybody. It is something that I think I would revisit in a time of grief, though, because I think it does, speak eloquently to the powerlessness one feels in situations such as this, especially when confronted with death. I thought this was well worthwhile seeing, and some wonderful performances. Rooney Mara is always on point, but she makes some incredible choices in this. And it was a pleasure to see her, and all the little bit people that came and went throughout the afterlife of the main character. I thought did a great job. There's a lot to sit down and gnaw on in this movie, and just because it never seemed long-winded to me. It's an hour and a half, and sometimes I think it's that's why I go see movies in theaters, because sometimes it's worth it to sit in that dark room and just look at that screen and let things play out. This is a movie that demands a lot of attention, but I think it pays off pretty good dividends. I will give it.
What will you give it?
8.5 overeaten pies.
Man, you're making us wait so long to know. I thought you were going to start eating pie.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really glad.
Pie?
If I had some, we'd already be eaten.
God damn it.
I'm really glad I actually did disagree with you guys, because I think we came up with a pretty spirited discussion, right?
You just tried to get that spirited joke in.
Well, I kind of had to.
No, you didn't.
I had no choice.
You're not
Richard.
Brian.
You don't understand. Brian is my son.
Brian was dead the whole time.
Yes.
Oneofus.net has been your one-stop shop for all things geek for years. But there's a side to them many of you have never heard. The subscription side. Subscribe and listen to great podcasts like The Breakfast Pub, The Original Gentleman, and the Watch a Movie With Us series. Head on over to Oneofus.net and don't forget your towel.